A sad childhood memory. I'm an old man now, but I remember my childhood clearly. I was only 10 years old when my life changed forever. I had a happy family. My father was kind and strong, and my mother was caring and loving. We lived in a small house in the countryside. One day everything changed. It was a sunny morning, and my parents decided to go to the city. They needed to buy some things for our home. They told me to stay at home and take care of my little brother, who was only 4 years old. I remember waving goodbye to them. My brother and I played together in the yard waiting for them to come back. The hours passed and the sun began to set, but they did not return. I started to feel worried. That evening, a man came to our house. He was a neighbor, and his face looked sad. He told me that there had been an accident. My parents' car had crashed. My heart felt heavy. I didn't want to believe it. The neighbor said my parents were gone. I didn't understand at first. Gone? Where did they go? I asked. But then I realized what he meant. My parents were dead. I felt like the world stopped. My little brother didn't understand. He kept asking, "Where are Mama and Papa?" I didn't know what to say to him. I held his hand and cried. That night, I stayed awake thinking about what would happen to us. I was just a child, but now I had to be strong. I had to take care of my brother. The next morning, I woke up early. My little brother was still asleep. I looked at him and felt a strong sense of responsibility. I was only 10, but I knew I had to take care of him. He was all I had now, and I was all he had. Our neighbor came to check on us. He brought some food and tried to comfort me. "You are a brave boy," he said. "Your parents would be proud of you." His words made me cry, but I didn't let my brother see my tears. I had to be strong for him. That day, I cleaned the house and cooked a simple meal. I didn't know much about cooking, but I tried my best. My brother sat at the table looking sad. "When will Mama and Papa come back?" he asked again. His words broke my heart. I told him, "They are in heaven now, watching over us." The days after the accident were hard. I had to learn how to do everything by myself. I washed our clothes, made our meals, and kept the house clean. It wasn't easy, but I did it for my brother. I wanted him to have a safe and happy life, even though our parents were gone. Sometimes at night, I would sit alone and think about my parents. I missed them so much. I missed my father's laughter and my mother's warm hugs. The house felt so empty without them, but every time I looked at my brother, I reminded myself that I couldn't give up. He needed me. One evening, my brother came to me with a small toy. It was an old car that my father had given him. He held it tightly and said, "Papa told me to take care of this car. I will keep it safe forever." His words made me smile and cry at the same time. I promised myself that I would take care of my brother, just like my parents had taken care of us. I didn't know how, but I knew I would find a way. We were alone, but we had each other. And that was enough for me. Life after the accident was very hard. Every day was a challenge. I had to grow up quickly, even though I was still a child. My little brother needed me, and I didn't want to let him down. I became both a brother and a parent to him. I remember one cold winter morning. We had no firewood to keep the house warm. I put on my father's old coat, which was too big for me, and went outside. I collected small branches and dry leaves from the ground. My hands were freezing, but I didn't stop. I had to keep my brother warm. When I returned, I made a small fire. My brother sat close to it, holding his hands out to feel the heat. He smiled and said, "Thank you, brother." His words gave me strength. I knew I was doing the right thing, even though it was difficult. We didn't have much food, but I always made sure my brother had enough to eat. Sometimes I would go to the market and buy a little bread and milk with the small amount of money we had. I would skip meals so that my brother could eat more. Seeing him happy was worth every sacrifice. At night, I would tell my brother stories. I made up tales about brave knights and magical kingdoms. He would listen with wide eyes, forgetting his sadness for a little while. His laughter was the best sound in the world to me. One day, our neighbor brought us a small gift. It was a box of clothes that his children no longer needed. Inside, there was a warm sweater for my brother and a pair of boots for me. I was so grateful. Those simple gifts meant so much to us. Despite the hardships, my brother and I found small moments of happiness. We would play outside in the snow, building snowmen and throwing snowballs. For a few hours, we could forget our troubles and just be children. I often thought about my parents. I wished they could see us. I hoped they would be proud of how I was taking care of my brother. I miss them every day, but their love stayed with me, giving me the courage to keep going. As time went on, my brother and I learned to live with our new life. It was not easy, but we found ways to survive. I started doing small jobs in the village. I would carry water, clean yards, or help with farming. People were kind and gave me small amounts of money. Every coin I earned went toward food and clothes for my brother. One day, I heard my brother coughing. It was a cold winter, and our house was not warm enough. I felt worried. I didn't have money to buy medicine. I wrapped him in a blanket and told him stories to make him feel better. But deep inside, I felt helpless. The next morning, I went to see our neighbor. I told him about my brother. He gave me some medicine and said, "You are doing so well, but don't forget to take care of yourself, too." I nodded, but I knew that my brother's health was my first priority. I spent the next few days taking care of him. I made him soup and kept him warm. Slowly, he started to feel better. His smile returned, and I felt a huge weight lift from my heart. I hugged him tightly and said, "I will always take care of you." Even though life was hard, my brother and I had each other. We found joy in small things. Sometimes we would sit by the fire and look at the stars through the window. My brother would ask, "Do you think Mama and Papa are looking at the same stars?" I smiled and said, "Yes, they are watching over us." There were days when I felt tired and overwhelmed. I missed being a normal child. I missed playing and laughing like the other kids, but every time I saw my brother's face, I knew I had to keep going. He needed me, and I couldn't let him down. One afternoon, my brother showed me a drawing he made. It was a picture of our family. He had drawn Mama, Papa, himself, and me. He said, "I don't want to forget them." I looked at the picture and felt tears in my eyes. "We will never forget them," I said. "Our parents may have been gone, but their love stayed with us. It gave us the strength to face each day." I promised myself that no matter how hard life became, I would protect my brother and keep our family's memory alive. The seasons changed and life continued. My brother and I faced many challenges, but we stayed together. I found more small jobs in the village, and people often gave me food or clothes instead of money. Every little thing helped us survive. One day, I was working when a kind woman approached me. She was the teacher from the village school. She had heard about our story. She looked at me and said, "You are very brave, but you should go to school too." I shook my head and said, "I can't. My brother needs me." She smiled and said, "Bring him with you. He can play while you learn." Her words gave me hope. I wanted to learn, but I didn't know if it was possible. The next day, I took my brother's hand and we went to the school together. At first, I felt nervous. The other children looked at me, but they didn't say anything. The teacher gave me a seat and handed me a book. She spoke kindly and helped me with my first lesson. I felt happy. It was the first time in a long while that I wasn't thinking about work or worry. While I studied, my brother played outside with the younger children. He laughed and ran around the yard. Seeing him happy made me feel proud. For the first time, I felt like things were getting better. Every day after school, I worked in the evenings to make sure we had enough to eat. Life was still hard, but I felt stronger. I learned to read and write, and I shared everything I learned with my brother. He loved hearing me read stories from the school books. One night, as we sat by the fire, my brother said, "You are the best brother in the world." His words filled my heart with warmth. I hugged him and said, "We are a team, and we will always take care of each other." The school became a new chapter in our lives. It gave me hope for the future. I wanted to learn as much as I could, so I could give my brother a better life. My parents were gone, but their love guided me every step of the way. I knew that life would never be easy, but I also knew that we had each other, and that was enough to keep me going. As time went on, my brother and I grew stronger together. The small village that once felt so lonely started to feel like home again. People were kind to us, and their help made our lives a little easier. But I never forgot the promise I made to myself to protect my brother and give him a better life. One day when I was older, I found a better job in a nearby town. It was hard to leave the village, but I knew I had to. I worked long hours and sent money back to my brother so he could stay in school. Every letter he sent me was full of hope and gratitude. Years later, I returned to the village. My brother had grown tall and strong. He greeted me with a big smile and said, "You kept your promise. You gave me a future." His words brought tears to my eyes. I realized that all the struggles we faced had been worth it. We sat together that evening, remembering our parents. We looked at the drawing he had made years ago of our family. It was old and faded, but it still brought back memories of love and warmth. My brother said, "I think they would be proud of us." I nodded, knowing he was right. Now, as an old man, I often think about those difficult years. They were filled with pain and loss, but also with love and courage. My brother and I didn't just survive. We built a life together. When I look at him now, with his own family and children, I feel a sense of peace. I know that sacrifices we made helped him become the man he is today. And through it all, the love of our parents stayed with us, guiding us every step of the way. The memories of those years are bittersweet, but they taught me the true meaning of family. No matter how hard life becomes, love can carry us through. And in the end, love is all that matters.